at this hour, the ceasefire between Israel and Iran appears to be holding. But do remember who we're dealing with here. Iran, one of the world's least trustworthy and most unscrupulous regimes. And even if the mullahs of Iran agree not to launch any more missiles for the time being, they might still retaliate against the United States in other indirect ways. The Department of Homeland Security is warning of the potential for low-level cyber attacks carried out by pro-Iranian hackers. And we're not just talking about hacking your phone or shutting down the internet. We're talking about the regime targeting vital infrastructure. In the last several years, it has targeted U.S. banks, hospitals, water facilities, all with varying levels of success. And just yesterday, Iranian-aligned hackers claimed responsibility for a cyber attack on President Trump's Truth Social platform. And of course, there's still the threat of the analog age terrorism, bombings, shootings, cars and vehicles plowing through crowds. Customs and Border Protection says the threat of sleeper cells in the United States has never been higher. So how worried should Americans be? Joining us now is Jonathan Schanzer. He's the executive director of the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. He's also a former terrorism finance analyst at the U.S. Department of Treasury. Great to have you with us. So I'm curious, would Iran risk attacking the United States right now in any capacity, cyber or those analog examples or using sleeper cells? Would it risk inviting another massive attack from President Trump?
Look, I think it would be suicide for the regime to do it, but I think they are undoubtedly probing, right? I mean, we put them directly in the crosshairs, and I think they're probably thinking about how they can exact their revenge. We need to remember that this is the regime that is the state sponsor of Hamas, Hezbollah, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, the Houthis, about 12.5 different Shiite militias in Iraq and Syria. They're all terrorist groups. But it's even worse than that, because the Iranian regime also, if you go back and you look at the 9/11 Commission report, you'll see that Iran was actually involved with al-Qaeda, providing some measure of support to a Sunni jihadist group. You'd think that al-Qaeda and Iran maybe wouldn't get along, but here they are. And so we've got all these assets at their disposal, but they're also recruiting young people in Europe, kids, 15, 16, 17 years old, to shoot at the Israeli embassy. They're hiring, criminal gangs to try to carry out assassinations. And they've done that here in this country. So there's a lot of risk here to watch. And of course, the cyber one is the most easy way to do this because it's non-kinetic. Of course, we've got excellent cyber services who are probably inside a lot of their systems right now. But attacks are certainly possible.
Yeah, you mentioned the criminal gangs. There was just that alert and bulletin yesterday from Sweden that a warning that Iran was encouraging criminal gangs in Sweden to target and attack Americans who were traveling there. It raises the question, how much control does the Ayatollah and Iran have over these rogue groups, these sleeper cells?
Right, and I don't think it all tracks back to one man. It's a system that he created, and it's under the watch of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC. And these are the most loyal practitioners of the Islamic Revolution. They are the ones who are behind the vast majority of the terrorist attacks. They're the people that were the guards of the nuclear program. They hold the most closely guarded secrets in the regime. And they have created this network. And this network is dangerous because it is so widespread, because it is diffuse, and because there is sometimes deniability. In other words, you get a criminal gang, or you get kids that are recruited off the streets for not even a lot of money. And the Iranians can prompt these things to happen, these terror. They can do some with some deniability, and those are the sorts of things that I'm watching right now.
You mentioned the cyber attacks. That seems to have everybody the most concerned right now. Iran has a very robust cyber terrorism unit that works.
They do, but I have to say that right now I would be shocked if the United States and the Israelis and maybe the Brits and some of the other Western cyber powers are not already inside the Iranian systems. In other words, they call it defending forward, right? They're up in the systems already looking for malign actors that might try to put malicious code into our systems. And I've got to imagine the Israelis and the United States are on high alert for this. They have been, I think, throughout the entire war in Israel, and certainly since the U.S. has decided to enter into the fray, some 12 days ago. I do think that that they're looking. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't actors that are outside of Iran that are off of our radar, that are off of the Israeli radar, and that's obviously also something to be concerned about. But
Yeah.
I think to just put it very bluntly, the Iranians are very good at asymmetric warfare. They've always fought by proxy. They fight all of their enemies by way of someone else, and that keeps them at arm's length.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.